We are on Kuf Yudalad Amud Aleph 114a, the Mishnah at the top of the page. After a lengthy digression, all kinds of various discussions and topics, the Gemara comes back to the main subject of this chapter. The chapter being titled Arvi Psachim, the evenings of Pesach, which discuss the laws of the evening of Pesach. So the Gemara finally comes back to that. Now, of course, the Gemara comments on the Mishnah, so it follows the order of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah follows the chronological order of events. It began with Erev Pesach, before Pesach starts, in the afternoon, and there's a couple of things we learned in preparation for your Seder. Number one, make sure you have an appetite. And we discussed that at great length. When to stop eating, how much to eat, what kind of foods to eat, which led us to a whole discussion of how this is different than a regular Shabbos when you have to have an appetite, which led us to a whole discussion about what you do if you're mid-meal and Shabbos starts and you want to stop and make Kiddush in the middle, right? Which led us down the halachas of Kiddush in general. We learned a lot of those halachas, laws of Kiddush, right? The laws of pogum, the laws of making Kiddush on bread, making Kiddush on other drinks, right? That took us down that route. And the other halacha we also learned was, in preparation for the Seder, one is to make sure that number one, they have something to lean on, because on the night of the Seder, one must lean. And even if the person is, God forbid, taking handouts, he has to make sure he's got 4 cups of wine. And we learned the halachas related to that too. We learned the halachas of setting the table. It has to be set opulently, beautifully, to demonstrate our freedom. We learned about the importance of making sure you have 4 cups. So now that we have our Seder set, our table set, and we have an appetite, the Gemara now gets to the actual order of the Seder, beginning with Kaddish, the first of the 15 steps. The 15 steps are not identified in the Gemara as 15 steps. It's our division into 15 steps, which comes centuries later. In fact, we once had occasion to speak about this, how there are other divisions, some that have much more than 15, some that have less. You break it up into smaller things. You can make it into, like for example, we have one step called Magid, which means to retell the story. But you can divide that into question and answer. That would be 2. You could divide it into more, different parts of the answer, the storytelling, the analyzation of the pasuk of Arami Avidavi, all the various different stages. At any rate, the Gemara begins with the first step, which is Kaddish, as follows. The big Mishnah there at the beginning, yeah, there was 10 lines down. The line begins with the word Masnisan of the bold. Masni with the apostrophe stands for Masnisan, our Mishnah. Mazguloi kois rishon. They fill up for him the first cup. Someone's doing it for him. Which is an interesting phrasing.
Who's him?
The person leading the Seder. Or the person, not the person leading the Seder, the person observing the Seder. That is to say, me and you. But it's written here, Mazguloi, they fill up for him. Right? There's many indeed have that custom. On the Seder night, they are served as part of the freedom. At any rate, he has his first cup of wine. Mazgul Kaishishin, the first cup of wine is prepared. Beis Shammai says, Mevarech al hayoim, he first makes the blessing on the day. And only afterwards, Mevarech al hayayin, he makes a bracha on the wine. This is connected to something we discussed earlier, right? We discussed the order of Kiddush, right? Yayin, Kiddush, Ner Abdallah. When you have the Kiddush and Abdallah combined, that was a big discussion we had earlier. And the Gemara discussed there.
It was a mnemonic, no?
The mnemonic. But there, the Gemara cited to this Mishnah. which is a dispute between Shammai and Hillel, which comes first. Every Friday, and this is not just true of the Seder night, it's true of every Friday night. Or anytime we make Kiddush, there's two brachas we always make, at a minimum, two brachas. The bracha over the cup of wine, thanking God for a cup of wine. Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam al hagafen. Or Baruch Pri Hagafen, I'm sorry. And then this other bracha we make is sanctifying that day. So on Shabbos, it'll be sanctifying Kiddush. On Yom Tov, it'll be sanctifying Yom Tov, or whatever particular Yom Tov happens to be. So which of these two brachas come first? The bracha over the cup of wine, or the bracha sanctifying the day? So Beis Shammai says, first you sanctify the day, and afterwards you make the bracha thanking Hashem for wine. Which would mean on a Friday night, you will start off first. And then say, of course, we don't do that because we follow Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel in the house of Hillel says, first you recite the blessing, thanking Hashem for the wine, and then you sanctify the day. This is the Mishnah. It's a very short analysis from the Gemara, and the analysis of the Gemara amounts to giving us the reasons for their respective positions, and then why the halacha is concluded one way, and then from there, the Gemara gets to the second cup of the next part of the Seder, which would be the karpas. Okay, so says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanan, our sages taught in the Tosefta, in a Mishnaic age text that didn't make it to the final cut of the Mishnah, collected in the Tosefta. Quote, Dvarim shebein Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, amongst the distinctions between Shammai and Hillel, b'su'uda, with regard to how one is to conduct their meal. The Gemara in Brachas lists more distinctions, but here the Gemara is only citing to our distinction, which is whether you make the bracha hagafen or you make the bracha of Kiddush first. And this Mishnaic text, this Tosefta gives the reasons. Beis Shammai says, which we just learned, one should first make the blessing sanctifying the day, and only afterwards is make the blessing thanking Hashem for wine. Why? Two reasons. Number one, what is causing what? Why am I drinking wine right now? Which of these two things is causing which? The wine causing the day to be sanctified, or the day to be sanctified is causing me to pick up the cup of wine, especially before the meal. Even if I always drink wine at a meal every night, I only do so after I wash, have challah, assuming my meal has bread, as was the reality for most of history. So first I wash, have bread, and then I have wine. But here, tonight, whether it's Shabbos or Yom Tov, I'm drinking wine prior to the meal. Why? Why am I doing it, no?
Because we've already brought it in Marav.
Oh, we're gonna get to that in a second. But first, why am I drinking the wine? No, you're right. You're right. But why am I drinking the wine? Because of the sanctity of the day. So because the sanctity of the day is the cause for the wine at this moment, first do the sanctity of the day, and then the wine. Because it's cause in terms of cause and effect, it's the cause, and therefore it precedes. Number two, like Alan just said, the day has already been sanctified. First of all, as you just said, you've already sanctified the day in davening, but even before davening, by the very fact that the sun set, the day is sanctified. And yet the wine is not here yet, which means it's already been a few hours since the day is sanctified without wine. And what now, you're going to put a pause in the sanctity to drink wine, to make a bracha on wine first? Not fair. So both chronologically and in terms of cause and effect, wine comes first. Right? So both of these reasons really are actually one reason, but divided into two. The reason is, at the core, the precedence of the sanctity over wine, both in terms of cause and effect, in terms of idea. The idea of the sanctity comes prior to the idea of the wine, because it's what causes the wine to be drunk now prior to the meal, as Rashbam puts it. And number two, chronologically, the second Yom Tov hits, the sanctity is there, especially since you declared it already in Ma'ariv. And the wine only comes later. So therefore, it's inappropriate to make the bracha of the wine before the sanctity of the day. This is Beishamai's view.
I think you said it the reverse just a few minutes ago. You were saying the wine takes precedence. Anyway,
In Beis Hillel's view. Oh, okay, I misspoke.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you'll see.
Okay, I misspoke then. Yeah, the sanctity before the cause and effect. The sanctity comes before the wine. Okay. Both in cause and effect and in chronology.
Okay.
Sanctity comes before wine. This is Beishamai's view. Beis Hillel is of the view. One makes the blessing over the wine, but only afterwards, does he sanctify the day? Why? Two reasons. Now, unlike Shammai, where the two reasons are going to be linked to one, in Beis Hillel, there are actually going to be two distinct reasons, at least in the face of it. So, reason number one, it's true, Beis Hillel retorts to Beis Shammai, that the sanctity is what causes the wine to arrive. But what is causing me to declare the sanctity? The presence of wine. Without wine, or bread for that matter, I don't declare that sanctity. Certainly not right now. Maybe I'll have declared it in Ma'ariv. But by declaring the sanctity of Shabbos now is only because the wine is here. So to you, who says that sanctity causes wine, that's true. But the declaration of sanctity is not caused on its own. That's caused by the wine. Sorry?
Also, it would be just like drinking another cup of wine.
Exactly.
An ordinary cup of wine.
Exactly. So, I'm sorry, explain what you mean.
Well, you say the bracha anyways when you're drinking a cup of wine.
Okay. And therefore?
So it's just like drinking, just like making a bracha over wine. It doesn't have anything to do with the Shabbos.
You're making it.
You're declaring it first.
And you should be first doing the sanctity.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Beishamai's position. That the wine is only valuable now because of the sanctity.
Sure.
Right? But that's Beishamai's position. But Rabbi Shammai is speaking of the sanctity itself, whereas Beis Hillel is speaking about the declaration of the sanctity. You're right, the sanctity is here without the wine. And therefore it's causing me to bring a cup of wine right now, making it special. Right? But Beis Hillel is saying that wine is the only reason why you're declaring the sanctity. Without the wine, you wouldn't declare it. It would just exist in the atmosphere. Follow?
I don't understand what you mean by declaring the sanctity.
I would not be making a bracha sanctifying the day of Shabbos without the wine now. Or Yom Tov.
But if you just said the first part of you said the bracha over the day.
Yeah.
Isn't that a declaration?
I wouldn't be doing that without wine.
You wouldn't.
No. I cannot make Kiddush without wine. Or challah. Right? So by Shammai, Beis Hillel is saying to Beis Shammai, you're right. That the sanctity exists independent of the wine, and it's causing the wine to come. But you are speaking, Beis Shammai, of the sanctity in its abstraction. But in terms of the act I'm about to engage in, what's the act I'm about to engage in? Kiddush, declaration of the sanctity. That declaration can only be made over wine. And therefore the wine is causing the declaration. And therefore wine comes first, says Beis Hillel. Follow? What are you missing?
We're making an assumption that you need wine in order to be Kiddush.
That's correct. That's the halacha.
But that's halacha, but
that's right.
You have to go before.
No. So in terms of the sage's implementation of the mitzvah to declare the sanctity of Shabbos, it can only be achieved if you have the presence of wine. So the wine is now causing me to be able to fulfill the mitzvah of sanctifying the Shabbos. Okay, so here we get to something Never shares. Never speaks about this idea called l'shitasa, which means it's not the idea of l'shitasa is not unique to the Rebbe. This is something that exists in lots of Talmudic literature, commentary on the Gemara, which is namely to take seemingly disparate discussions and find a common theme between them, and that, let's say, we'll use Beis Shammai and Hillel. Beis Shammai and Hillel dispute in, 15 places throughout the Gemara to find a common thread that undergirds their thinking. right? So in other words, they have like a core dispute, and then that core dispute is manifest in all these different scenarios.
Right, they're just variants of the core.
Of the core, yeah. So there's various different layers in the Shittase, which is not for now, and the Rebbe has a very unique position, taking the Rogachover's position on the Shittase even further, but we'll leave that alone. At any rate, the Rebbe does this with a number of different disputes. Shammai and Hillel, Rav and Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, disputants throughout the Talmud, and the Rebbe finds a common theme between them, Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel, and explains a number of different disputes in that context. So when it comes to Shammai and Hillel, there's a beautiful lengthy discussion on this. I didn't look it up before. But anyway, I share with you what the Rebbe says there. That Shammai and Hillel dispute on whether you focus on the potential or the actual. So, classic example. Do you like the menorah? Do you like the menorah day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as we do? Or do you do 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? So Beis Shammai says, well, potentially, how many days left do you have to Hanukkah? You have 8 days left, light 8 candles. You have 7 days left, light 7 candles. Beis Hillel says, well, how many do you actually have right now? You only have 1 day. Okay, and like this, the Rebbe explains this throughout Shas, throughout the Gemara. And the same thing is true here. I have to look up to see how the Rebbe explains this Gemara, but we'll do so God willing before tomorrow. But it seems pretty clear. Before you even make Kiddush, the day has been sanctified. In that contains the potentiality for all the observances of that day, including the sanctification of the day, including the mitzvah of Kiddush. And therefore, the sanctity causes the act of making Kiddush. Whereas Beis Hillel says, well, what is actually in front of you? What's actually in front of you here is the mitzvah to declare the Shabbos. And the mitzvah to declare the Shabbos is only brought about by the wine. The actual. Okay, so this is all reason number 1 for Beis Hillel. For why Beis Hillel says first the wine and then Kiddush. Why? Because the mitzvah to declare the sanctity of the day, which is what we're about to do now. We're making Kiddush. We're declaring the sanctity of the day. We're making a blessing for that sanctity. That mitzvah can only be observed if wine is here, and if a wine is causing the mitzvah of Kiddush. Okay, another reason is because Birchas Hayayin Tedira, the blessing of wine, is more frequent. Birchas Hayayin, but declaring the sanctity of the day, Eina Tedira, is not as frequent. And we have a rule which you derive from the mitzvah of the daily offerings. Right? You have the daily offerings called the Tamid, the consistent daily offerings. And then you have the Musaf, the added offerings. And the Torah tells us you have to do the daily offerings before the additional Musaf offerings on Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos, Yom Tov. And the Torah indicates the reason is because it's more frequent. And that which is more frequent takes more precedent. Tadir, V'she'ena Tadir. If you have in front of you 2 obligations, one that is frequent and one that is less frequent, Tadir Kodim, the frequent one goes first. Okay, so when it comes to Kiddush and wine is going to be more frequent for a very simple reason. Right? Because, well, okay, every single time you have Kiddush, you have wine. Right? Additionally, there are a bunch of other mitzvahs that ask you to hold wine. Havdalah, benching, weddings, bris milah. Right? So the wine mitzvah is going to be more frequent than the Kiddush mitzvah. I don't think he means the drinking of wine for leisure. But even the mitzvah of wine, even the mitzvah of drinking wine, right, where's that Rashi?
Mitzvah is more frequent.
Is more frequent, that's correct. There's a Gemara elsewhere discusses this, and there's the commentaries there as well. Sukkah. Okay. The Gemara concludes, this Mishnah text concludes, the law follows the Hillel. We all know this. We make the bracha gafen, and then we declare the sanctity of Kiddush. The Yom HaShishi, as we learned a while back, is just introductory verses, not part of the actual blessings. The blessings is the Hagafen and the Kiddush, and we always do Hagafen first. That's our rule. We learned this already back when we did the combined Havdalah, the other brachas in it as well. Okay, so this is the end of the Mishnah text. The Gemara asks, "My davar acher." why does the Gemara have to give a second reason for Hillel? Reason number one, because the wine is what's allowing you to make the bracha of Kiddush. Reason number two, to declare to make the bracha to do the mitzvah of declaring Kiddush, declaring the sanctity.
There was more frequency.
And number two, because the wine is more frequent. So why is it necessary to bring a second reason? Says the Gemara, because let's suggest that Hassam over there, Beis Shammai, Tarti has two reasons. Beis Shammai had two reasons. Number one, because ideologically, theoretically, the sanctity comes first, right? The sanctity causes the Kiddush, the wine to be drunk now before the meal. And number two, chronologically, the sanctity comes first, right? As soon as the sun sets, it becomes sanctified. So Vahacha, and here Beis Hillel, Chada only has one reason, and therefore you might conclude Beis Shammai should be the halacha. Therefore, the Gemara also adds, therefore the Mishnah text adds that Beis Hillel also has a second reason, that that the frequency issue, that the wine is more frequent than the Kiddush.
Is it always that number of reasons
Outweighs.
always outweighs any other consideration?
It's a very interesting Gemara. That's exactly. So first of all, why does number of reasons outweigh?
The one is much more weight.
Sorry?
I'm saying perhaps maybe 1 versus 2, the 1 has more weight than the 2.
That's right.
But it sounds here as if they're saying a general principle that if you have more reasons than that rules, that outweighs.
Yeah. So I think the Gemara is trying to say it like this: if you're going to decide on causality, what causes what? If you're going to decide purely on precedence in their interrelationship between wine and Kiddush, you might have concluded Beis Shammai has a better reason, because he has a double nature to his causality. A, the sanctity causes you to bring the wine now. B, chronologically, the sanctity's been sitting around here for all this time.
It's also
So in other words, it's exactly. So it's not
reasons of causation.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is why the Gemara doesn't say here, well, because Shammai has 2, so Hillel also has 2. The Gemara phrases it, lest you say Beis Shammai has 2. What do you mean, lest you say Beis Shammai has 2? Doesn't he have to or not? Well, because the 2 is not really 2, it's 2 and 1. And therefore you might have said that the 2 and 1 outweighs the 1 in that same 1. So in other words, if the entire question of how you rule the halacha is based on which one causes what, Shammai has more weight in his causality than Hillel does. Because Hillel's causality is only with respect to declaring the sanctity, whereas Beis Shammai's causality is in the whole entire thing, chronologically, and in the causality of the day causing you to have the wine now to begin with.
So if
and that's perhaps what the Gemara is saying, to which the Gemara says, well, hold on a second. Besides for the fact that Hillel can respond to the causality issue, he also has a whole other issue that he wants to deal with. And if we have two independent reasons to follow Hillel, and not just a stronger reason within one argument. That's perhaps how we should understand this Gemara here.
But if there's no way to really answer this question, but if it were only causation issue, then presumably Hillel would have won. Shammai would have won on that.
You might have concluded that.
Might have.
We're going to see in a second why we may have concluded anyway with Beis Hillel, but you might have thought that. You might have said, well, you know why this Tosefta is giving me more weight to Shammai's reason than Hillel's? Is because the Tosefta wants me to think that the halacha follows Shammai because he has stronger value in the issue of who causes who.
So really, the weight really does favor Shammai, but Hillel had this other reason. So they went on that ground.
Correct. That Hillel's position is not only because he has a counter argument to the causality issue, in which case you might have said Shammai is stronger, but because he actually has another principle that he's following, which is a universal one, which is the frequency issue. Okay, so the Gemara concludes. Let's finish up these few lines before the next Mishnah tomorrow.
Have to get the brain back into
this way of thinking, because we've been in the Drush. We got to get into the halacha. That's right. Okay, but halacha, Kedivri Beis Hillel, the Tosefta declared that the halacha follows Hillel. The Gemara asks, Pshita, we already know the halacha follows Hillel. And the Mishnaic texts do not every time tell us, hey, follow Hillel. So why would the Tosefta here need to tell us follow Hillel? Obviously, Why is it so obvious? Tahanafik Basko. We have the Gemara told us elsewhere that there was a period of time when people of the school of Shammai and people of the school of Hillel were disputing and they could not find consensus. And you imagine you're walking down the street and you see one house, the menorah is lit 8 candles, and the next house, the menorah is lit 1 candle. Because this is a Shammai house and it's night 1 of Hanukkah and he's lighting 8 candles. And the other house is a Hillel house. And sometimes you have a father-in-law and a son-in-law from the house of Hillel, from the house of Shammai, is causing all kinds of disputes and problems. Right? Think of the Sephardic and Ashkenazic father-in-law, son-in-law dynamic, whether they should have rice on Pesach or not have rice on Pesach, and amplify that for every household in the Shammai Hillel dispute. So God decided, says the Gemara, it was out of hand, and a voice from heaven was declared, we follow Hillel. So says the Gemara, if a voice from heaven already declared that we follow Hillel, then why does the Mishnah text to tell us, oh, follow Hillel? Of course we know we follow Hillel. It's already been declared. So the Gemara answers, 2 answers. Number 1, we can suggest number 1, it's possible this Mishnah text predates that declaration from heaven. It's still in that time frame when the dispute was ongoing, which means in most areas of halacha, one can either follow the house of Shammai or the house of Hillel, depending on which school he came from. And in this text, the Mishnah says, oh, wait, well, a second. Well, guys, I know that everywhere else we allow you to choose Hillel, Shammai. Here, you got to follow Hillel. Pre-Baskal, pre-declaration. That's suggestion number 1. This would follow what we were just saying earlier, that the Mishnah text had to give 2 reasons for Hillel to tell all the guys who usually follow Shammai, hey, in this case, we're not allowing you to do that. In this case, you got to follow Hillel because we have 2 principles.
That could be an indication that it was a pre-Baskal.
That's right.
Experience.
That's number 1. Another option for why the Mishnah text needs to declare that the halacha follows Hillel, even though universally we always follow Hillel, considering the Batkal, considering the declaration from heaven. La'achar Baskal. This could be even after the declaration from heaven came that said we have to follow Hillel, and yet the Mishnah text needs to tell us, hey, follow Hillel. Why? Rabbi Yeshua, because this Mishnah text is Rabbi Yeshua speaking. The Amar, which Rabbi Yeshua famously said, Ein mashkichin b'baskal. We do not decide halacha based on declaration from heaven.
Right, there's a case, right?
This is the famous story.
Yeah, I don't remember. But
The story. Yeah, this is the story. That Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua were arguing on the day that they deposed Rabbi Gamliel from his position as Nasi. We learned about that position, that whole the story. So on that day, says the Gemara, there was a big dispute between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. The sages sided with Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Lezer performed a bunch of miracles, demonstrating he was right. Until finally he said, you know something, they're going to tell you, I'm going to show you I'm right, because in heaven they're going to agree with me. And a voice from heaven came out and said, Allah follows Hillel. To which Rabbi Yeshua said, thank you very much, heaven, for your opinion, but Torah is not in heaven. Torah lebishamayim, this is a pasuk. And the Torah is given to this world, and in this world it says, we follow the majority. To which, actually, halacha followed that, and Tosfos discusses this business. We're going to leave that alone for now. Maybe tomorrow we'll look at the Tosfos, because it's a nice Tosfos.
Haven't conceded to that.
Haven't conceded. And the Gemara there concludes that later someone met Eliyahu Hanavi and asked Eliyahu Hanavi what was God doing at this time. And Eliyahu Hanavi says, God was laughing or smiling and said, my children, you outsmarted me. God's proud. His children outsmarted him because, yes, you're right. Torah says you follow the majority. So because Rabbi Yeshua is of the view that we ignore declarations from heaven, and he is the one speaking in this Mishnah text, so the fact that heaven declared follow Hillel isn't good enough for him. Therefore, he has to say, hey guys, follow Hillel here, because 2 reasons versus 1.
Did that argument?
Also, you could say, what's more important, Shabbos, bringing in the Shabbos, or drinking a cup of wine?
That was Shammai's argument, right?
Shabbos is the one.
So you're arguing for Shammai that you should be making Kiddush before wine.
Yeah, of course.
Well, we're very sorry, Alan. The halacha doesn't follow you.
Make the Kiddush before the wine first.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Well, I'm very sorry, Alan, but the halacha follows Hillel. I hear you, but what you're saying is correct. That's Shammai's view. the Gemara responds with the other principle. We have to follow, we have to go with that which is more frequent. Plus, there is an argument to be made that the wine is the one that's causing me to make Kiddush. Because I cannot make Kiddush without a cup of wine. Okay. What do you want to say?
That whole discussion was heavy and ruling that it's the majority that controls. Did that unravel the Batko in terms of unraveling the harmony that was created from the Batko and in terms of people coming together?
Oh, good question. So, we'll look at the Tosfos tomorrow. Tosfos addresses that kind of.
Okay.
We'll look at Tosfos tomorrow where it addresses
Because
why
you
is
could-
it
you could see
that when it comes to the
them say, well, this majority, there's two majorities.
So the essence of your question is as follows. When it came to Hillel and Shammai, we follow the Baskal, and we go with Hillel. When it comes to Rebbe Lezer and Yeshua, we do not follow the Baskal and go with Rebbe Lezer.
Not tight now.
So why is that? Why is it when it comes to Hillel and Shammai, we're following the Baskal? When it comes to Rebbe Lezer and Yeshua, we're not following the Baskal. Why? That's Tosfos' question. We'll look at that tomorrow since you asked it. Okay, wonderful day. And
Good day, thank you.
we have to try. We have to switch our modes in our head.
Yeah.
We've been doing drush,
It took me
homiletics.
a good 5 minutes into the class to
Yeah, we've been doing
latch on.
social commentary, psychological commentary, advice for life, and all of a sudden we're going back into the grind of halacha. But it's going to get more and more because we're getting to the Seder night,
Parts of the brain.
and the Seder night is detailed beyond
Details.
details. Yeah,
Right.
had a teacher used to say, details and details.
And what?
Details. He's making a play on Hebrew. In Hebrew, you say pratim and prate pratim.
Oh.
Like prate pratim. So you say detail and details.
Details on the details.
Exactly. Okay, wonderful day.
Compounded
Compounded details.
interest.
Callan, you'll call me later if you're not going to go to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good day.
Good day, Alan.
Thank you.